Hey everyone, it's TB Shores. I'm back. It is still July the 5th, 2020. It's 4:20 p.m. Okay, right now we're looking at the May calendar again, and I want to start explaining something about a 6-day period. Okay, when we look at May, I hope I said May a minute ago. I've got so many things running through my mind, I may misspeak occasionally. But yes, we're looking at May 22nd, and we're going to look at something the Lord showed me. Counting from May 22nd, knowing that it is the beginning of the kingdom age. Of course, I feel like the Lord has given plenty of markers in time for us to understand that May 22nd was the beginning of the kingdom age. So he had me to start counting from May 22nd, another 7/7, which is 7 weeks of 7 days each of an Omer count. But it began on May the 22nd, not here where you see Shavuot, or the end of the existing Omer count that was in place at that time. I was a little puzzled by that. Why not pick it up when this other count ended and continue from there? But when you see where this falls and the significance of where this falls on the calendar, I think you'll understand what God was doing with the time there, especially to what I'm going to point out about this Omer count and it's starting at this point and what that represents. So we started another 7/7 Omer count, which is 49 days, from May the 22nd. Now, when we count 7 sevens, which is 7 weeks, let me think of the easiest way to get us there without disrupting what I've got pulled up. Give me just a moment. I think we can do it with this. Okay, so if this is a calendar, the whole calendar for the year of 2020. So if we start counting here May the 22nd, and we want to count 7 weeks out, okay? So this is 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Okay, so that takes us to July the 10th. Okay, now if we pop over here to July, we see July the 10th is the very next day after we see this fast of Tammuz on Tammuz the 17th. And that is the beginning of the 3 weeks of mourning that the Jewish people do every year for 3 weeks. They have a 3-week period of mourning because it leads up to Av the 9th. Here's our month of Av again, okay? Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av is what is considered a very destructive day in the history of the Jewish people. It's the day that both of their temples were destroyed. It's the day that Moses broke the 10 Commandments. He broke the tablets. And there's a couple other things. I'm not going to get into that at the moment. We may discuss that in more detail later. But right now, we just want to look at how we got to this July 10th date and how it connects to the beginning of the 3 weeks of mourning. Now, when the Lord took me to this date, I noticed right off, it's like he brought my attention straight to this 3 weeks of mourning. bear with me. I'm looking for some notes that I should have had ready, and I don't have it right up, but I'll get it in a minute. But he took me right to this understanding this 3 weeks of mourning and doing a little homework on it. And I do find it significant because it's about a period of remembrance for the most horrific days that the Jewish people have experienced there in their history. So the Lord taken that 7-week count of another Omer count as we started from May the 22nd, and we see that to count 7 weeks out from May 22nd, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, takes us to July the 10th. Okay, the Lord is trying to show us some things. Now, let me say right now, this is all about understanding God's patterns. Just like we talked about the 3 days in the last video, to understand God's pattern of 3 days and what is the most significant thing that represents, where the kingdom began on the 22nd, and then we had this event that kicked in the rising of the kingdom of darkness 3 days later. So we understand how God works in these patterns, so that 3 days was significant in what was taking place here. Now, bear with me just a moment. In understanding, this takes us to another important point on the Hebrew calendar, and that we are keeping in mind the patterns that God lays out and what we're to understand from them, and the symbolism that is within much of these things the Lord is showing us. Now, do I know with certainty that these specific dates hold a significant event for us to know without a doubt that day is going to be a big day for us? I can't say that with absolute certainty, because just as in many times past, the Lord has used certain dates and what lies within understanding those dates to give us understanding that moves us forward, but doesn't necessarily give us a physical happening to relate to it. Okay, so I can't help but think, because he gave us the 522, the May 22nd, and it did bring in the start of the kingdom age. Maybe something has shifted in the spirit to where we can look at these dates as being more specific to seeing something happen. I just don't know with certainty how to answer that part of the puzzle, okay? But I know what the Lord is showing me. We just have to wait on Him to bring us an understanding of whether it is symbolic or whether it is literal. Everything is not always literal in the physical. Many things happen in the spiritual, and it takes time for us to see anything that we can recognize in connection with it. So I want to back up now to where we see the May 22nd beginning of the new count of an Omer count, okay? So when we realize here, we look at this being another count of an Omer, and we see that there's already an Omer count taking place, that gives us a double count, okay? Twice as much. So we see that taking place up until the 28th of May, okay? So that's a double count one of the Omer that was already being counted, that was set in place back at first Passover. And so then we're adding another Omer count that the Lord has shown me that's to be inserted here. And I was a bit puzzled by it. I was not understanding why. It left a big question mark in my mind because I was not understanding why an Omer count would start right there when we were already still in an Omer count. But what the Lord showed me is this is about what I just said. Not just one Omer count, but two Omer counts taking place at the same time, taking in two Omers. Now, where we see that, let me see, where's my scripture? Where we see that in scripture is in Exodus 16:22. And this is what it says. And it came to pass that on the sixth day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers. So that's what we see taking place when we insert another omer count here where we already have an existing omer count going on. We see one omer count and then another omer count, 2 omer count happening on the same day. And I want to add that this is happening. It happens for 6 days, from the 22nd to the 28th, because the 28th is the last day of the omer count. It actually starts on the 27th and carries over to the 28th. So we see the last of the omer count here on the 28th. Now, if we look at the 28 and the 22, there's a 6-day difference in between them. So this is a 6-day overlap, okay? A 6-day overlap, which takes us back to understanding about what I had mentioned. Remember I told you we were going to talk about the 6th day. This is pointing us to what the Lord wanted to show about the 6th day. Now we see here in Exodus 16:22, clearly, that's exactly what's happening right here. And it came to pass that on the 6th day, this is speaking of the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Okay, so here we see actual 2 omers being taken in one day, and that's what this is pointing us to. The 6th count is pointing us to the 6th day, okay, and it's pointing us to the taking in of 2 omers. Now, what is significant about that, right? I mean, let's see here. When I was seeking the Lord on it and asking him what was significant about that, he led me to understand it's about a double portion. Okay, remember the Omer was all about what we discovered in the last series of videos, that the Omer is all about, spiritually speaking, is all about taking in a measure each day of manna, which is growing in the Lord, a measure each day. And that's what this is speaking of. It's about growing in the Spirit, okay? The omers are about growing in the Spirit, and a double portion in the Spirit, okay? The Lord took me to understand that this is about a double portion in the Spirit. That's what he was pointing us to with the 6-day overlap, about understanding about a double portion and understanding about the 6th day. Okay, let's note right quick that the 6th day also points us back to what we discussed in some of the earlier videos, particularly the one that's entitled Mirrored Image of the Beginning, and how the 6th day that man was created, and God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed life into the breath of life into him, and how that we see Satan doing a mirror image of that to bring about the rise of the kingdom of darkness, whereas the breath of life was taken from someone to create this chaos that has come from that event, creating the rioting and the chaos and all the upheaval that continues to grow. And it's about where it's going to bring us. It's about the rising of the kingdom of darkness. But always keep in mind, as the darkness rises, so does the light. Okay? It's very important that we keep that in mind, because what this count of the Omer is pointing us to is that very thing. Okay? Let me see what I want to go back to here. All right, as we go back to May and we see that we have 6-day difference, the Lord's pointing us to the 6th day. He showed us the double, taking in 2 measures of the Omer and what it represents as we see it spiritually speaking in Exodus 22. One thing I want to note here too, in Exodus 16, if we back up to verse 5, that's when we see first in this chapter the mention of on the 6th day taking in twice as much. Okay, now keep in mind that's in the 5th verse. Okay, and when we get to the 22nd verse, we see this instruction again, that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much. Okay, so here we have the 522 again on the 5th verse and the 22nd verse. 522. The Lord keeps connecting this in ways that just kind of makes you go, wow. But anyway, this is about that Omer counting. Okay, I'm going to need to cut this off. I didn't realize this one had gotten so long. I will be back shortly, I hope. I love y'all. Bye-bye.